I am Peter, and this is my story. The fire was the only warm thing left in the world that night. It crackled low in the center of the courtyard, throwing orange light across the faces of the servants and soldiers who had gathered around it. I could smell the wood smoke thick in the cold air, mixing with the scent of torch oil and the damp stone of the high priest's walls. My sandals scraped against the cobblestones as I moved closer, not because I wanted company, but because the cold had gotten into my bones the way fear does, deep past muscle and marrow, settling somewhere you cannot reach with your hands. I should not have been there. That thought kept turning over in my mind like a stone you keep picking up and putting down. I had followed at a distance, the gospel writers would later say. At a distance, as if the space between me and him could protect me, as if 50 yards of dark Jerusalem Street could somehow make me less responsible for what happened next. I had been so sure of myself just hours before. I remember the way the words had come out of me at supper, loud and clean, the way a man speaks when he hasn't yet been tested. Lord, I am ready to go with you both to prison and to death. I had meant it. I want you to know that. In that upper room, with the bread still in my hand and his eyes on mine, I had meant every single syllable. But that was before Gethsemane, before the soldiers came with their torches and their swords and the terrible, organized sound of men who have been given orders. Before I watched them bind his hands, those hands I had seen touch lepers, calm water, pull me up from the waves when I was sinking, and lead him away like a criminal. Something inside me had cracked then, a sound no one else could hear, like a beam giving way inside a house. I had swung my sword. I had cut off a man's ear in the dark. And then he had healed the man I wounded, told me to put my sword away, and walked forward into the arrest willingly. And I had run. Not far, but I had run. Now I stood at this fire, pressing my palms toward the heat, watching the gate through which they had taken him. My chest felt hollow, scraped out, the way a gourd feels when you've pulled everything from the inside. I was cold in a way the fire couldn't fix. That was when the first servant girl looked at me. She was young, maybe 15, carrying a clay jug balanced against her hip. Her eyes moved across the faces at the fire the way people do when they're bored or curious, and then they stopped on mine. I watched her gaze sharpen. I watched recognition climb into her expression slowly, the way dawn comes, first just a suggestion, then unmistakable. "This man was with him," she said. She didn't say it like an accusation. She said it almost conversationally, the way you might say, "I think I've seen you at the market." But the words hit me like a hand flat across the face. The other people at the fire turned. Their eyes were torchlight and shadow, and suddenly I could feel every single one of them on my skin. And here is the moment I cannot escape when I close my eyes. Even now. Here is the hinge. It wasn't that I didn't have time to think. That's what I used to tell myself, that it happened too fast, that the words fell out of me before I could catch them. But that is a lie I told to soften the edge of the truth. The truth is that in the space between her words and my answer, I had a full and conscious moment of choosing. I felt it. A half-second of silence that stretched wide as a field. I could feel the cold of the stone wall behind me, solid and unyielding. I could feel the heat of the fire on the front of my legs. And somewhere in the middle of those two sensations, I felt the full weight of who I was and what I was about to do. I thought about the soldiers inside. I thought about their swords. I thought about the word prison, the word I myself had used, and how abstract it had felt an hour ago, and how brutally concrete it felt now. I thought, and I am not proud of this, I thought about my wife. about the fishing boats back in Galilee, about the life I had walked away from to follow him, a life that was still there, still waiting, still possible if I could just get through this courtyard without being arrested. The hollow place in my chest made its argument quietly and without mercy. You cannot help him by being taken too. You cannot help anyone if you are dead. Deny it. Just once. Just tonight. Woman, I heard myself say, I do not know him. The words came out flat and even. That was the worst part. My voice didn't shake. I didn't stumble over the syllables or whisper them or cast my eyes down. I looked at her, and I said them plainly, like a man stating the weather or the price of fish. I do not know him. I had said similar things before in my life, small denials, careful half-truths, the ordinary evasions that people use to protect themselves. But this was not that. This was a door slamming shut, and I felt it close inside me before the sound had even finished leaving my mouth. The girl shrugged and moved on. The soldiers by the fire went back to their conversation. The night swallowed my words and went on being the night. But I could not go back. The second time, it was a man who said it, someone who had also been watching me from the edge of the firelight. He was more direct. You also are one of them. And again, from somewhere beneath the place where my courage should have been, the same voice came out of me. Man, I am not. By the third time, an hour had crawled past, and a group of them had noticed. One of them pointed out that my accent gave me away, the flat northern vowels of a Galilean, unmistakable to a Jerusalem ear. And this time I felt something break completely open. Not grief yet. Not shame. Something uglier, something more desperate, the animal part of a man who is cornered and stops thinking and simply reacts. Man, I said, I do not know what you are talking about. And at that precise moment, I need you to feel this. At that exact second, while the denial was still warm in the air, a rooster crowed. The sound cut through the courtyard like a blade. It was just a bird, just the ordinary noise of morning beginning somewhere beyond the walls, a sound I had heard 1,000 times on the shore of Galilee while I pulled in nets in the gray pre-dawn. But that sound reached into my chest with both hands and turned something over. Because in the same instant, as if the universe itself had arranged it, I looked up. And he was looking at me. They were moving him through the courtyard, just passing through, just a moment, just a handful of steps. But his eyes found mine across the torchlight and the soldiers and the cold night air, and there was nothing in his gaze that I deserved. No anger, no disgust, nothing that would have made it easier. There was only a look that I can only describe as known. He looked at me the way you look at someone you have always understood completely. And in that look, I saw everything. I saw the upper room. I saw the water walking. I saw myself saying, I will never deny you with absolute confidence, the confidence of a man who had not yet met the version of himself that lived at the bottom of fear. I saw who I was. I went out then. I left the fire and the courtyard and the voices, and I went out into the street, into the dark, and I wept. Not quiet tears, not the dignified grief of a man who is sad. I wept the way a man weeps when he has destroyed something he cannot rebuild, bent over, shoulders shaking, the sound coming up from somewhere beneath language. The cobblestones were rough and cold under my knees. The air smelled of smoke and animal dung, and the particular dark smell of a city before dawn. I pressed my forehead against the stone wall of an alley, and I let it all come out. Because here is the thing about that moment that I have spent the rest of my life trying to understand. It was not just about him. It was about me. About the distance between who I believed I was and who I actually was when it cost something real to be that person. Every human being alive knows that gap. You have felt it too. The version of yourself you present at the fire, confident and loyal, and then the version that surfaces when the question gets asked in front of the wrong people. That gap is where shame lives. But I would learn, later, on another shore with another fire, with the smell of fish and morning on the water, that the gap is also where grace begins, that the rooster does not crow to condemn you. It crows to wake you up. The question was whether I would let it. The scripture reference is Luke 22:54-62. Also, Matthew 26:69-75 and Mark 14:66-72.